want to welcome with us today an artist, Dorian Vallejo. And Dorian's someone I've known for many, many years, but we reacquainted again just a few years ago. And so I've come to know him a little bit, and I'm really eager to have him visit with all of you today. So Dorian is somebody who has been a practicing artist, well, for all of his life, but he started doing professional work not long after graduating high school. And he very quickly became a professional illustrator, artist in the realm of fantasy art. And that's an interesting thing too, because he comes from a family of artists. His father's name is Boris Vallejo, and you may know him. He's one of the leading world artists in fantasy art. And so, so Dorian comes from that as a root, and he's very talented, but it's not due to talent the way I see it. I see Dorian as one of the hardest working people I've ever seen practicing art. And so I find him very inspirational, and I'm eager to give him this platform to talk to you. And one of the things that I saw when I get together with Dorian in his studio is his large array of sketchbooks, and he's kept sketchbooks for decades, and he has them organized in libraries even, because it takes up a lot of space, because he's always doing this. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity for all of you to see how a professional artist uses his sketchbook process to develop his ideas and record you know, everything that is in front of him. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dorian, and let you get started. I'm just going to ask students, if you have questions, you're welcome to post them in the chat. And at the end of his presentation, then we can get into some of the questions that you may have had. Okay, so we'll get started now. Thanks a lot.
All right, here we go. I, at the suggestion of Roger, have edited substantially what I was going to show you, and it's still a lot. So I have a lot of slides to get through. I think there are basically three main sections of my career. There's illustration, which I started almost around your age, and then the world of art sort of went into computers. I really love working traditionally with pencil and paint and ink and traditional media, and so I moved over to portraiture. There's something else that I'll show you in my process, and it relates to sketchbooks, that had me also make a switch from illustration to fine art portraiture. And at the same time, while I was working in my sketchbook, I was also working on my fine art, which might be considered the third component of what I've done with my art career. So without any further ado, we'll get started. I call this process individuation, and it's actually not my word. It's a term from a psychologist named Carl Jung, and it's really a process of how you come to understand yourself as an individual and the process of becoming an individual. So that's kind of what I want to share with you about how I did it. But what I'm going to try and do with this is suggest to you from the very beginning how you might do that for yourself. And so that's how I think maybe we'll start at the end with the assignment, which will be pretty simple. And then we'll, as I'm going through my slides, you'll see how I've done that for myself, and you'll be able to understand basically like how you might end up doing that for yourself. So this is not just an assignment that you complete in, I don't know what, 2-3 weeks. and then it's over, but maybe something you can carry with you for your whole life. One last note about that. The reason for that is when I was roughly your age, or maybe a couple of years older, gosh, well, so when I was younger even than you, and probably like most of you, I was drawing a whole lot, loved to draw, loved to doodle, loved to do things, and it was my reason for deciding that I wanted to be an artist. When I got into art school, it became apparent to me that a lot of the teachers there had become professional artists, but complained about being an artist, complained about their job, just like any other person complaining about their job. And when I asked them what they did for themselves, they didn't even do anything for themselves anymore. And the practice of becoming an artist had really just become as indiscriminate from being a greeter at Walmart. It's just something that they did. And in many cases, they really didn't like it. They worked at it, and then they couldn't wait to just get to their TV show at the end of the day. And I thought, gosh, that's not how I want my life to be. And so I was just a little bit older than you. And so I'm introducing that to you at the beginning of this talk, because my whole process as an artist is trying to maintain that initial enthusiasm that made me want to be an artist. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And so this is basically the assignment. Keep a sketchbook every day for about 30 to 60 minutes, and make it easy to do. So if you only have 30 minutes to do it, it's fine. If you're more ambitious and you want to do 60 minutes, that's fine too. Put it on a timer. And you might think that that's kind of excessive, but you have a lot of things to do with homework and other things that you do. And your whole life is on a timer anyhow. You wake up at a certain time, you have to be here at a certain time, it's over at a certain time. And so it's a good idea to kind of organize yourself and your ambitions and what you do. And I do that now with my life, and have done it pretty much my whole life. There are a lot of things I want to do. There are things I want to read and study and learn, and I put it all on a timer. And the advantage of that is rather than saying, gosh, I'm just going to wait until I have like one day to do like one big chunk of it, is when you're moving from day to day, there are things that you that impress upon you as things worth noting, things worth taking a look at, or they make an impression on you. So if you keep a regular practice, even if it's for 30 minutes a day, then you have this kind of cornucopia. You have a selection of different things from every single day that has raised its head and said to your mind, this is worthy of taking note. So so that's, see what announces itself to you as worthy of your time. And I'm not really specific, and you'll see like in my sketchbooks that some things are from imagination, some things I do from memory, where I might see something in the street or remember something from previously in the day and then try to just draw it that way. And some things are from direct observation, like when I'm working from life. And the imagination can be anything from abstract patterns to figure drawings or symbolic type of things, where I'm trying to make sense of something that is an idea that I have in my mind, and I'll share that with you too. So the last note about that is, while you're doing that, if you can, sort of like on the periphery, try and be asking yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Why does this thing seem like it's important to you? And it's not like terribly important, but it will be as you get older in life. that you want to have a sort of dialogue, an internal dialogue with yourself as to why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't figure that out, the world will certainly figure it out for you and put you into a job and put you into the workforce. And it will select things that are probably beneath you and not stimulating. So you want to sort of be asking yourself that question all the time as to why you're doing what you're doing. If you can improve it, then how could you improve it? And then, you know, set a timer and get after it. So, you know, and with the art as well, it's a process, like I say, of individuation. It's a process of coming to know for yourself what you think is interesting. So, okay, let's start again. I have these sketchbooks here. This really represents a selection of sketchbooks that's probably over the course of a couple of years. And at the very tippy top here are sketchbooks. Some of them I'll share. Obviously, I'm not going to share everything because we'll never get through this presentation. And I'm already wordy, as you can tell. This is where I just take up computer paper. I fold it in half, slip it in my pocket, and run out of the house. Underneath that, I also keep a book right here. These two books are kind of books that are similar to this that I keep with me at all times. There's a little pouch that has drawing materials in it. And these pieces of paper sticking out are notes that I add that may be ideas for drawings, maybe ideas of conversations that I had, maybe some profound thoughts that I have that feel like I better write them down before I lose them. Underneath that are a whole selection of sketchbooks that have a selection of things in them, but basically they have ideas for paintings, ideas for drawings, notes that go alongside them. I get some pages are extremely dense and detailed with notes and different color studies and different options and trying to resolve like how I might work something out. And I'll share some of that process with you as well. And that, you know, and then on the very bottom here, some of these are also maybe from here to here are personal sketchbooks that I'll share with you as well. And those personal sketchbooks are really devoted to a single cause. And that cause is something I'll share with you as we go along. And you'll see what I mean when I get there. All right, so this is some of, I would also call that similar practice. It's life drawings, they're observational drawings. So this probably represents on the top here, I don't know, maybe about 2 months worth of drawings, and really only on the weekends, like on Fridays, like 1 day a week. So it's scheduled for 1 day a week. So maybe if I was doing it every day, this might represent, oh gosh, 8 days of drawing, something like that, from life, really. And then this might represent, you know, like another couple of weeks of drawing. So obviously a fair amount of drawing. Okay. This stack of paper also represents something similar to what I would consider my personal drawings. There are loose sheets of paper that are not related to my symbolic drawings. They're related to that personal work that is with a single focus on a single particular topic. And that's only these drawings are only for that, and this probably represents I don't know, a couple of months worth of drawings. So okay, I'll start from here now. I think with, oh wait, one more slide. the sketchbooks basically relate to everything. So there's my illustration here, the fine art, my personal, the portraits. I'm experimenting. I write notes. I make studies in there. It's for exploration. It's also for practice. You can paint in there. It relates. The sketchbooks relate to painting, and also like more finished drawings as well. So I can get more crazy with this, but that's probably crazy enough. So okay, illustration. This is where I started, and when I was roughly your age, I was thinking that's what I wanted to do. My father's a science fiction fantasy illustrator. It looked like a whole lot of fun. I grew up with Star Wars, and it was much better for me than it was for you. But in any case, Conan, this was pretty much one of my first illustrations, and it was probably about 19 or 20 at the time. And so I'm going to start stepping through these kind of quickly, just so you have an idea where I started from, and then where I got to. So these were book covers. They, in some cases, what I did here, none of this actually is Photoshop. All of this appeared before Photoshop. They're all paintings. I wanted to share some details because I really loved what I was doing. It was a lot of fun. I built models for these things. I photographed the models. I did the paintings. I put it all together. It's just a whole lot of fun. I could get my grandfather to pose for me, and these ended up on book covers. Every painting was so interesting, such a challenge, like how to make a metallic dragon. And I would build a model and spray paint it with silver, and it was just a whole lot of fun to be doing, like only a couple of years after your age, at around your age. So the top portion was left for type, which you'll see in a minute because I'll show you some of the book covers. Very, very detailed. And I don't know if you can see here, but you know, book cover is really fairly small, but I enjoy doing this so much. There were, you know, tiny little scales with highlights on every scale, and you know, reflections in the metal, and little veins in these little orbs, and just a lot of fun. I would build the costume, and all of this I worked out in my sketchbooks as well. The color patterns, what would be in the costumes. So I'll share some of that. I'm going to share this painting and the process of some of the drawings I did for this painting later on in this presentation. Step through these. Nice spaceships, space battles, just a whole lot of fun. Hundreds of little spaceships. I don't know if you can see them, but microscopic. Just, you can tell that, you know, I really liked Star Wars at that time and science fiction. And then it would come out and it would look like this. And that really bothered me. I don't know if you immediately see something that bothers you in this, but I'll tell you what bothered me is the type. The type treatment looks so dreadful that I was literally losing sleep over it. And I thought, gosh, I'm kind of not made for this. It also seemed somewhat fake to me. So there, you know, this type is not as bad, but this type really is. And it really distressed me. Now, this type of thing here is on the right hand side here is an embossing. So they would take my painting and kind of try and make it stand out, this green type. You know, I just was losing sleep over it. It's not immediately apparent to you here, but this painting actually went in the other direction. So they flipped it for the book cover. My name, which you can probably barely see, is backwards. The D starts here, and then it starts going backwards. They just took my painting and flipped the whole thing. The whole background that I had worked out carefully was cropped out. This type goes over it. So, you know, I figured this is like too much for me. Like in my early 20s at this point, and I'm thinking, I'm sweating. I am not enjoying this. I'm losing sleep. I like the subject matter, but suddenly the computer's starting to intrude, doing all sorts of weird things. And I'm thinking, like, the amount of stress I'm dealing with and unhappiness that I'm dealing with in my early 20s is not going to make me a happy camper when I'm 50. And so I always like people. Obviously, you can see, like, with the illustration. And since the illustration work and the commercial work started moving towards computers, traditional type of portraiture really looked like that was a good avenue for me to pursue. And so I started doing that. And these are a couple of examples of those. They're really a lot of fun. Large paintings where the illustrations were small, probably on the order of 20 by 30 inches. A painting like this might be on the order of 6 or 7 feet. It was very large, and that's a life-size painting. You get this little arrow out of the way. Very sweet, something much more sincere and real about people as they really are. And that really kind of interested me, you know. So I'll speed along a little bit here. Some of these paintings are done directly from life. I also did quicker drawings. I did longer paintings that are giant, then quicker drawings from life, where people would just sit in front of me and I would draw them. I know you guys are familiar with that. And sometimes when they're too young and they couldn't really sit, then I would do them from photographs, on a toned piece of paper, some drawings, just a variety of things. The honesty of looking at a real person struck me as something worth doing. And so you can see very quickly that I'm starting to move away from the science fiction and the fantasy and move towards something that struck me as being more honest and kind of like, that's a real person. That's, you know, this is a real person, real character, and a real energy in a human being that struck me as more sincere and authentic than the kind of fake thing that I was doing for illustration to sell products, that stories that I might never have read on my own, might not have really been interested in, or products that I just didn't even agree with. And this was far more in harmony with what I felt was a more sincere approach to using my talents as an artist and you know, trying to bring art into the world. So from there, I love doing people, but there were other ideas too that had to do with poetry and things that I read, and philosophy and psychology and kind of symbolic ideas, and I wanted to pursue those. So here are some of those. These are some paintings. I'll start out with some paintings. And I won't talk too much about them. I'll just share some of the paintings here. And maybe at the end, if you have questions about them. What's kind of interesting, what I'm doing with the paintings is exploring in the same way different avenues, things. It's not just the same type of painting again and again and again, like as if I don't know, I'm not going to criticize, but let's just say as if I did landscapes with houses and then that's all I did. So with most of my work, you can see I get on a subject, explore it for a little while, I try something different. It all relates to humanity. it all relates to an experience. Some of it's poetic, some of it's dreamlike. It's just some of it's symbolic. So some of it's related to something that looks a little bit more like it could, the world that we're dealing with today. So that's very something that I see in my life that definitely seems like it raises its head and says to my mind, that's so beautiful. You really need to capture this moment in paint. The sunlight, the sewing, the feminine aspect of it. It's, to my mind, it's such a far, I mean, this is something that I did more recently, maybe last year. And this is such a far leap from dragons and spaceships and superheroes. And when I get to the sketchbook section, I'm going to show you how I got there. That's something that you might see, maybe not you, but in your own life. This is what I see regularly. And it's so splendid. It's so beautiful to me that it really announces itself to me as something worth making into a bit of visual poetry. So symbolic drawings, these are kind of the fine art drawings. Let's see. Okay, these are some other type of drawings that I do as well that relate to my interest in comics and pop culture. So these are another type of drawing that is also, you might say that it's related to comics. And the complexity, what I like in comics, and then the reality and the sincerity of something that I actually see. Again, that seems to me like that's really worth making art from. And then I change it up, try something different. So, okay. I think that may be the end of my little journey in those three areas. And now I'll talk about the sketchbook. So we'll start with what I did for illustration. This is the painting that I told you earlier that I was going to share with you. And for each illustration, now I haven't put all the drawings here, all the sketches, but I thought I'd show you a selection of sketches that I did for one idea for one painting that it would appear on a book cover. The ethic that I had associated with how to pursue an idea was that I had to come up with at least 30 ideas, and probably if I was getting obsessive about it, I would stop at 100. So in order to do that, I would have to go through a process of acquiring knowledge about how it should actually look. So this is this was an illustration for a book on martial arts. I knew only the smallest bit, and so I would start, you know, maybe watching movies on martial arts, or going to the library at the time because there was no internet, and getting books to find out what are like authentic poses, and then work through them, and then try to get that into my mental vocabulary so that I could make the cover. So it would have to be with an alien because it was science fiction. So I would do the same thing. Over here, you can see that maybe what I would do is I would start with lizards and you know, real world animals, and then start very quickly trying to make it into, take that knowledge that once it was in my library, mental library, try and make it into an alien, try and combine things. And that's a pretty standard practice. Any one who's interested in science fiction and fantasy understands that's what people, other artists have been doing for a long time. They acquire knowledge, and then they see how their brain processes it, and they try and combine it together. And so that's what I was doing. And then I would start trying to put them together. Let's see. So, just a bunch of sketches. And like I say, there would be at least 30. In this case, I did many, many more. And then this happened. I'd be working in the sketchbook, and right next to me, I'd be up late, up early, up late, and I just loved what I was doing. And then the person that I was living with, who was sleeping right beside me, looked so lovely and so beautiful. And so I just started drawing her. And and I thought, God, that's interesting. Like, I love working from life, but I never thought that that's what was going to do anything for me. And so, I sort of got back to doing what I was supposed to be doing for my job, and redoubled my efforts. And, and then eventually this is how it came out. And again, this type treatment is not terrible, but there's more to the painting. Now, this painting is not the greatest painting, not the greatest photograph in the world. It was photographed with a frame, so there's shadows on either side, which are these odd, like, dark little bands here. But there's more to the painting. There's more atmosphere. My name is on the bottom here, looking very dark, but it's there. And in the final result, my name is cropped out. Half of his arm is cropped out. Like, his head goes. This is not as bad as the other ones, but like, this just sort of distressed me. And like I said earlier, and the people who were professionals in the field that were older than me sort of laughed at me and said, "Oh, you'll get over it. It's no big deal. By the time you've done, several hundred of them, it won't bother you anymore." And I thought to myself, actually, no, I don't want to get to that space where, when my work is cut up and moved around, it doesn't bother me. It should bother me. These things are important. I've done hundreds of drawings to get to this stage. To have half of it, like, thrown away just should bother me. And I didn't quite know what to do, but I just kept doing work. And so for something like this painting, I would start, again, collecting reference. Some things, I think, on the left-hand side, some of these are like from the television, and I would freeze frame it and then start drawing to try and get ideas for different spaceships, and look at comic books and start, the process all over again. And I did, I don't know, over 100 illustrations. So this was a fairly frequent thing, and then right next to when I should be working on ideas, this happens again, and I'm like, this is happening a lot, and more, then, like, a little cartoons start to come. And probably you guys do cartoons. A lot of artists do. It's a kind of fun way of connecting with your partner and those that are close to you, to do kind of cartoons of them. And if we get to it, and I think we will, because I think I'm making halfway decent time here. I'll share some of the cartoons I do today with the person in my life today. And so, I get back to work, and I really loved what I was doing, except that, this really is starting to make itself feel more sincere. Like, this just is looking so lovely to me. And they're really not good drawings. They're actually, like, what kind of terrible drawings. But in their terribleness is something that while I was working on the drawing, let's see if I can explain this. So, this was my girlfriend at the time, and I loved her, and there felt to me something so like I was utilizing the gifts of life, whatever they were, that were bestowed upon me in the most noble manner. That here was something that I love to do, to draw and paint, and I made paintings of her too. But to draw, to practice drawing, to draw the person that I love, to draw what I saw as beautiful, and not have it art directed, not have type like on it. And yes, it's done on a cheap little piece of paper in a cheap book, but it was a start, and it seemed like I was starting to feel something that felt like it was calling and pulling at me as the right thing to be doing with my life and my talent and my purpose on this planet. And so that's kind of, related to how I laid out the assignment for you guys to just do what you think you like to do and see where it takes you. And this is what's been, this is what happened and what continues to happen to me in my life, and it's why I carry those sketchbooks. They're an absolutely vital part for me of being an artist, and I would say for anybody, but I won't speak for the world. I'll speak for myself. Then I start to take it a little more seriously, and it's again not a very good drawing. Clearly not very flattering. I think if she saw this now, she'd probably laugh at it because it's really not very good and it's pretty unflattering. But it's my attempt to go from something like this to saying, all right, I'm gonna actually work on this for a longer period of time. And it's unfinished, and the reason why I think it's unfinished is she probably, after posing her heart out for several hours, said, let me see what you're working on, looked at what I was working on, and was so horrified. She's like, that's it. I'm not posing for that drawing anymore. Like, just look at what you did with me. But she's pretty generous, and she's posed for me many times after that. But if she was with a friend of hers, if you would have told me a couple of years prior to this that I would find a subject matter of this nature worth drawing, and not robots, and not overly muscled superheroes and Conan and comic books and scantily clad females, I would have thought, no way. And yet, since I was continuing to work on my sketchbook, this type of thing struck me as sincere, and the way people actually really were. Like, it's two friends, one of them's pregnant, one of them's had a baby already, and she's just taking half her sock off, and Jesus, that's so real. It's so honest and sincere. The size of that belly too. It's just, I don't know. To my mind, it just struck me as worthwhile. The gesture of it. It's not contrived. It's not selling anything. It just is an honest representation of two human beings that I saw that we all could probably know and relate to, because the gestures are so real, so human. They speak to the way, like, two females at that age, probably only, maybe 5-6 years older than you, maybe a little more, but they're not superheroes. These are real people. And so to that end, I think we'll start with the sketchbooks that I showed you in the beginning, and the little sketchbooks on the top, and how I catch all that information, how I use it to explore different ideas, to practice different things, to engage in that personal type of drawing that I'm sharing you, and where the personal drawings have taken me to this day. And, you know, fundamental with all of that is a growing appreciation for the gesture. My feeling is like the rendering is impressive. You know, like obviously I can paint things exactly the way they need to be, and I can render until the cows come home. But the immediacy of something, the gesture of something, is really what I think underlies, for me, the importance behind the rendering. The rendering can be done by photograph. It's the gesture that I think, as an artist, announces itself to me and says, here, like, try and capture that. So those little sketchbooks on the very, very top, where I fold up pieces of paper, they're about that size. This is a little micron pen. I think you're probably half familiar with that, or something like it. So I put it by so you could see very small, something that can just slip into my pocket. Again, I mean, this drawing's probably better than what I was doing initially. It's not great. It's just meant as a scribble. She's not even posing. I don't know what she was doing, but in most of these drawings, people are not posing. I'm moving very quickly. Outside, I have a brush pen. The gesture of people is the thing, the way people are relating, the way they're overlapping in space. Clearly not superheroes or sci-fi aliens. It's real people, and in the real world. And to me, that just increasingly seems like something worth capturing. Here's a selection of those little drawings. And again, you know, like, you'll see more and more that the girlfriend that I have is present in my work in many different forms. So here she is. She's also an artist. She has a little cup of coffee here. She's thinking over here. I think here she was looking at some art books and then happened to just look up at me for a second. All this is happening so rapidly. And the intention is not to make a great drawing. The intention is to use the ink and get something down and make some marks. And here she is with her mother. Again, like, if someone had told me when I was roughly your age that I would find this subject matter more interesting than robots, and guns and lasers, I would never even have thought it possible. But I know that the people that I was friendly with at the time that went into illustration this is an idea, because this is the world we all live in at the moment, but particularly you, it'll just move faster for you than it did for me, and it's moving pretty darn fast for all of us now. Those people that stayed with the science fiction and fantasy illustration, and it went towards computers, and eventually, you know, the internet, and things just change. The world of book covers and that market no longer really can support a single artist anymore in the way that it did when I first started. And a lot of those artists are kind of bitter. They struggle for work. They are not happy with the work that they do, because they have to compromise. It's some job that they really don't care about anymore. The look of the thing that interested them from the very beginning, the kind of robots and science fiction and stuff that I thought was fun to do, and they did too, has altered so dramatically that it's not even the kind of thing that they're doing science fiction and fantasy, but it doesn't have that same look. It has a look that they don't even really like. And so we've all gotten to that age. They're the artist teacher that I met in school that is that age, complaining about the work that they do and happy to take a break watching movies. And they're just, or they work on a movie, they do some concept design, and they're not recognized. They're just a cog in the wheel. A lot of their work gets thrown to the side. They kind of feel bitter about the movie industry or the entertainment industry or the gaming industry. I'm not saying everybody. Surely it's not everybody, but a lot of the people that I know from that time period, either they have complaints. Maybe that's just a good way. I don't. I love what I'm doing. I just love it to bits. I wake up early, just as early as I did when I was your age. I go to sleep really late, and I'm doing work of the best work that I think that I've ever done in my life, and I'm just anxious to do even more. So that's a nice way to live as an artist. It's a nice way to live as a human being. And so this is work that I do that in that second tier of in that little pile, where I keep this book, and it's fairly thick. This one's finished already, in my car. And I generally see something, I remember it, and so these are kind of memory drawings. I might see something in the world. I think that's really interesting. This girl with her cat. I had been drawing from life all day. And this was a friend, and she took a break, and she was posing for me, and she was playing with her cat, and I thought, that's lovely. She'll never be able to hold that. I didn't have a camera. And later on, when I had my little book with me, and I thought, let me see if I can remember that image that's in my mind. I think it's not some kind of dog, or it's not any kind of dog that I know. It's obviously not accurate. And my memory is probably better for people. But there it is, and somebody walking. And then I got interrupted, and so I never finished the drawing. But these are the kind of things not meant in a sketchbook to be great drawings at all. Just meant to it's a sketchbook. It stays in the car, and I've lost several of these sketchbooks with lots and lots of drawings, much to my dismay, because they're things that I like, and you'll see as I get further on and I share, it's because I write notes in them, and sometimes they're more developed. Usually the traveling sketchbooks, like in the car, are really for very, very quick notations. If I'm on line at the post office, if I go into the supermarket and I'm online there, if I drive by, like say for example in this case, I drove by, I saw these two kids playing next to a tree, and they had a bicycle, and I thought, that's just so beautiful. It was a summer day, the sun was shining, the weather was perfect, and I thought, oh my, if I could just like say something even quickly about that, the beauty of life, that would be nice. And so these are the kind of notes that I make. I was at a friend's garden party, and people are around chatting and talking, and there's food and whatever, and so I'm drawing. Most of the time I'm drawing, and memory drawings of my girlfriend. I probably should just name her, since I've said her often enough. This is Kelly. And just moving and leaving, and getting set to go out to do something. this might be one of these memory drawings here on the left of somebody waiting online at the supermarket in the winter. And, you know, that perspective is because, you know, you'll notice, and if you haven't already, that people, when you're standing next to them, you can see their head at a normal angle, and then their body starts to dwindle down, and you're actually looking down at their feet. And that's kind of got an interesting look. And so, like, I try and make note of that and remember it, and then jot it down. And all these things will sort of relate to what I do with my actual work. Here's, you know, more things. Another poorly drawn dog. Probably should do more of those. But it's a mother and her child, and it's raining. You know, she's obviously got like a little hood on and stuff, and so does he. And this was just so lovely. Like, they took a jump in the puddle. And again, there's no camera, and it's got to be done from memory. And that's my memory of it. And it's not a great drawing. It's meant to sort of capture it in a very quick way, with me sitting in the car and golly, 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. It's just not that long of a drawing. And you can tell, very quick drawings. Then some of the drawings take on, you know, notes, as I mentioned earlier, maybe a little bit more of a combination between comic books and observation, but this is all from imagination. You know, more of that. Maybe it's another poorly drawn dog. I think I'm trying to, you know, work out that problem that I see as a weakness in my own head. But again, it's the gesture of people. It's things that people are doing when they're not paying attention, when they're not really posing. Here's Kelly working with her plants, and, you know, people just in thought, just doing things. And this is from imagination, or maybe observation, and then I come back and try to remember it. And this is the larger sketchbooks where I start working out ideas for my own kind of projects. And you know, these type of things are it's a memory drawing as well. And so you're gonna see something in a little while that takes this and develops it even further. So it's obviously it's a girl in her room, but it's Kelly, and with her things around her, getting set to go to the gym, and she obviously didn't pose. This would be a very difficult pose to take, and I just thought it was so interesting that it would. I tried to do it from memory. And so these sketchbooks now have like random drawings. They kind of catch everything together. They're ideas for paintings. Some things are ideas for drawings. Some things will never get done. Some things have like little notes on the side, you know, where it's present in my head. I think, oh, that might be a good idea. Write it down. Sometimes I get a little, you know, crazy about trying to work out like the tiny little patterns and things that have ideas that sometimes they get lost, and you know, they just stay in this state. And sometimes I actually take them and I finish them off as a real finished work. But this is sort of a link to what you saw me doing with the illustration. I would have an idea and then develop it at least 30 times. And in many cases, I do the same thing now for the finished fine art drawings and paintings. I get an idea and I will work that idea to pieces, trying to look at it from every different angle. Let me pause there for 1 second. The reason for that, and I found this to be true, I had a teacher roughly a year or two after somewhere around, again, somewhere around your age. And he said to me, your first idea is usually the most obvious and banal idea. Discard it. It's probably the idea to be discarded. And probably after you've worked on it for a while, then you'll get into the idea and come up, you'll understand what you're trying to do better. But your initial idea is the most obvious conclusion, and you just want to have a practice of not being attached to that initial idea and try and work it out further. So, I've kept that practice my whole life, and sometimes my initial idea is the best. Usually it's not. I'm just not that clear of a thinker. I don't see things clearly in my head at all. It's usually very foggy, and I have to work out one idea, and when I work it out, I think that's not the right direction, and then I work out something else, and I think, well, that's a little better, but it's still not right, and then I work out something else, and I think, I don't know if you're ever going to get there, but you better just keep working at this. And happily, I like drawing, and I like working at ideas, and the theme of this whole thing and the whole sketchbook process is basically that. I don't even know when I was younger, I thought that I knew what I wanted to do, and I started doing it, and I came to realize, your initial idea, nope, that's not right. And something else started, raising its head and announcing to me that there would be a better way of moving forward. So I started in that direction. And that process is the process of becoming an individual. So you might remember that earlier painting that I showed you where the person was made up of a maze. My mom thinks it looks like ribbons. It was meant to be a maze. But in any case, these are a couple of sketches among many, many sketches. Too many. I edited a whole bunch out, and I know this is dense. And I have to thank Roger for telling me to put more than one on a page. So, and then this is always happening now, and it's not an accident. Now I'm doing it like deliberately, and so like and I kind of segregate sketch pads. This type of thing, this is Kelly, and this type of thing makes it into every single sketchbook that I have. There's not one sketchbook that doesn't have a drawing that I've done of her, and it's because I love her, and that's the most important thing in the world to me. It's the most important person in the world to me. So she's always there. If she's doing something that I think is, like, here we were, she was waking up in the morning and we were just talking. And so I always have my materials with me. Like I said, for you and your assignment, make it easy. Make it easy for you to do the thing you love to do. In this case, it's, drawing or painting or whatever it is that is that artistic thing. Make it really easy. So I always have drawing materials around me at every moment. And so, we wake up in the morning, she's talking to me, and I'm drawing, and the light's coming in, and I think, it's just so lovely. And, that's happening right alongside this. Maybe, she gets up and makes her coffee, and then I'm sitting down and I'm trying to work out ideas for like a painting. And sometimes they're tiny little ideas, and sometimes they're more like, like they're just happening again and again and again, trying to work out the pattern, how it might work out better. Maybe it's just a little blur, and I'm thinking, can I incorporate that in some kind of way? Doesn't make any sense to you, I'm sure, but to me at the time it did. And so to the personal sketchbooks at the bottom of that pile, Now it's with deliberate purpose. Materials, you know, and the poetry, the thing that I see that is beautiful, that makes me engage everything that I love to do and that I'm thankful to be alive to be doing, that I can use my eyesight, that I can use my talent and develop my talent and my skill, my love for drawing, and then my love and appreciation for this human being that feels safe in my presence, that she can sleep and feel protected, and you know, wow, like it's just, and I can make art from it. I can try different things, and you know, here she woke up and she's looking at me in the morning, and you know, I can experiment and try other things that will make itself eventually present in my work too. There's a willingness on my part to explore, try different things, even if it's you know, pencil, or you know, if I cut up a piece of paper, tape it down, try something different. In all of my work, you know, in my life, I like exploring. I like trying new things. I don't like just repeating myself again and again and again the same way. There's some things that are consistent that seem like they're important to me, but I like experimenting. So I do that. So these drawings then take an even more deliberate, more advanced type of form in what I call my collector's editions, where they're also drawings in a book like this. So you can see the seam running through the middle of the page. Now I'm taking that drawing even further, and I wouldn't even consider this as far as it can go. It's just further along. So now it's really personal, and now it's with deliberate intention. I am seeing something that I think is worth noting, worth making visual poetry, and I keep repeating these things intentionally, because that's what I want you to think about as you're doing your own assignment and keeping your own sketchbooks. And it's maybe something like, I've been doing this obviously my whole life, and it's because I keep those sketchbooks that I've gotten to this stage, and who knows where I'm going, but it's because I keep thinking it's important to make notes of the thing that my mind captures and your mind will capture throughout your whole life, that seems like it's worth making art from. And so here's my girlfriend, and she's also an artist, and she's kind of got a lot of stuff around her when she's making her art, and it's so wild and crazy, and I've never seen anybody do anything like that. And so she's so creative and so inventive, and I think that's worth me making art from. So, you know, there it is. And there's a different, that's a friend of mine, and you know, in her apartment, in this big window, and it's raining outside, and like, wow, it's just so real. And so, oh, you know what? That's the girl who I did from memory with the cat. So, so she was posing for me during the day. She took a break, and while she was taking a break, the sincerity and the reality of taking a break and not posing for me was this pose. And I was like, that's it, right? That's the pose I want. Something where you're not posing. Perfect. And so that's how these drawings, it's when what I like in life are when people are are just being themselves and not posing. And that comes from my earlier distaste for products and commercialism of intentionally trying to dramatize things that just struck me as fake as smiles in a Colgate commercial. Like I had my fill of it, and just it's not how I wanted to use my talents. So there's something similar to that drawing that I showed you of Kelly getting dressed, but this time it's not from memory, it's from observation, and a combination of memory and a combination of imagination. So everything's coming together. It's clearly not a photograph, and all of the elements that have been of interest to me in my life are coalescing together to make art. And this is a long hop, jump, and skip away from spaceships. Not that there's anything wrong with spaceships. It's just that this is where the sketchbook process took me, and I like it. Here's Kelly again with a bunch of brushes and sun coming in, and these things. To me now, there's a poetry that, again, the gesture of the thing, that's so real. That doesn't happen by trying to pose somebody. Like, that's just happening in reality, and it's real. So I'll share a couple of these. It's a different friend of mine. So probably you'll notice in a lot of my work, well, it's feminine, and it's because the focus is on the feminine. It's on the female, and I did a lot of robots and muscular men and action type of masculine type of work when I was younger, and my appreciation for the feminine and life in particular is something that my mind keeps thinking is needs more exploration, and so I just keep doing it. So there's that same friend of mine that had the cat and was in the window, and here she's at a cafe. Those glasses, that was just so cool. The little things that I find cool now, anyhow, but the whole thing seems like something that could really be. Even her heart, like the bag over here on the left-hand side with the hearts on it, it's like so characteristic of the time period that we live in, like what's going on right now. It's not a fantasy, but it's not a fantasy, but it is a fantasy. It's real. This is Kelly, but it's not Kelly. Like that is Kelly, but it's not Kelly. So it's art. It's poetry. It's not a photograph. It's my interpretation of a visual kind of haiku poem, something that I'm trying to figure out what might be a poetic self-expression of the world that I live in today. And that's a way of answering that question of why you're doing what you're doing. What I suggested to you when you're doing this thing is like you want to make art, and art is a creative self-expression of what's going on in your head and how you're responding to the world that you live in, knowing that we are all marching, second by second towards the inevitable, and your art is something worth developing, something worth living for, and making an expression of, and you can do that through your sketchbook, and it will take form and it will reward you. And it will make life seem worth living. And when you do it really well, other people will, at its highest form, other people will think, they too will look at your artwork and respond and want to hang it on their wall because it will remind them of what makes life worth living. So, this kind of thing. So, okay. So I have these, I mentioned to you, and it looks like we have a little bit of time left here. So you have Roger to thank for that, for helping me to edit down the process. It was probably twice as long and not as well edited. The last thing I'm going to share with you are a couple of cartoons. I said that I have this little cartoon style that I work on as well, and that's super personal. Like, I never share this. I don't even think I share it on Instagram or anything. It's really just something that I share with Kelly. They're drawings of her, our little adventures in the world. And sometimes when she's been on a trip, she used to travel for the Museum of Natural History in New York, and she traveled around the world. Sometimes we would travel together. And I've done a bunch of these cartoons, and I put them together. And sometimes I just hold my camera and well, I'll just share it. I'll show you what it is, and then you'll know. So let's go here. Oh, fiddly. Let me escape here. I'm like messing this whole thing up. All right. I'll start with this one here. That might be a better one to start with. Okay. So I'll take this, I'll bring it down here. This was in an apartment that she had, but I'll start and I'll talk you through it. So there I am. Oh, maybe I'll just be quiet. We're packing. It was late at night, and we're leaving. We're both dead tired. It's really, really late at night. Get on an airplane and off we go. And she falls asleep. I probably fell asleep drawing. And we fly all night and arrive someplace early in the morning. And of course, we go to look at artwork in a museum, and various different paintings, and go to see different sites. And there was this weird looking thing, and then we have dinner at night together, and that's a fun little thing. So let's see, the other one that I have is this one here. And so I've done a lot of these, and they're fun, and like I say, they're just personal. So you're probably the first people ever, other than a couple of friends, to see anything, and Kelly obviously, to see any of these. But maybe, if I develop it further, my love for comics, which is always there, might make itself into the real world and into another part of what I do, because I'm doing this anyhow. So, all right, this one here starts out, and it looks kind of abstract, and maybe it's not clear what it is, but in the next section, it will be more clear. And then it's obviously it's clear that it's car, and what do you do when you're in traffic? You make good use of your time, and sometimes in life that's all you need. So that pretty much concludes that pretty much concludes my little speech. So let's see. Roger, are you there?
I am here, and I
Okay.
just wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you're contributing with us. I've seen some of this work before, but I'm always thrilled to see all the work that you do, because I think your work ethic is amazing, and the ideas you generate are just constantly, interesting and surprising. There's something I tell students. Oh, before I tell my little story, folks, if you have questions, put it in the chat now, and then we'll look through and we'll ask Dorian some questions in your behalf. But what I wanted to say, while those of you who want to ask questions are contributing, what I tell students very often is, one's job as an artist is to put something in front of the eye of the viewer. And your job is to capture their attention. I think we could all agree on that. You want to capture the attention of somebody looking at your art. And then if they're going to bother to look at your art for a moment, then I think the challenge as an artist is to hold them for absolutely as long as possible. So I think if you're doing something amazing, then you're just holding your audience wrapped, that they don't want to look away. They just want to keep looking into the work that you've put in front of them. And I'm saying that now because when I look at your sketchbook pages, I want to keep looking deeper into them. I don't want to be rushed, and I don't want to have the next image put in front of me. I just want to spend more time looking at it. And so in that sense, I think you're doing that very thing of holding your audience kind of mesmerized for as long as possible. So anyway, that was my point. So at this point, let's just look through.
I would just like to add, Dorian, I think what struck me with your presentation, you're obviously a very talented, capable artist with a great imagination, but it's the commitment that you make each and every day to practicing your work, and just the depth of wanting to explore your human experience and what you find aesthetically pleasing, I think is really inspirational and moving. The recommendation to, celebrate something visually in your sketchbook for 30 to 60 minutes each and every day, it's really incredible, because that becomes cumulative, right? If you're doing this each and every day, you're practicing this level of commitment, you can see your progress over time, and I think that's what really struck me, and I think is really meaningful for our students. Everybody think about utilizing your sketchbook as a place to explore who you are. For 30 to 60 minutes a day, you could even journal in it, record important ideas and things you're thinking about. So I want to thank you, Dorian. That was an incredible thing, that struck me, I think, the most was the talent plus commitment. Every person can be talented, but if they don't bring that level of commitment, their work could become static. And I think your work is fluid, and you're always open to new ideas from what I can observe. So thank you so much.
Thank you. and thank you, Roger. So, all right. So it looks like we have a little bit of time left for questions. So I moved a lot quicker than we thought, eh?
Sure.
So that's good timing then.
Absolutely. So Leo's asking, how does research play a role in your sketchbook process?
Okay. Maybe we could be just a little, Leo, ask me a little more. I don't know if you want to turn on your sound, or, I'm fine with that, or maybe it gets chaotic. I don't know, but maybe you could flesh that out for me a little bit more when you're so I can answer you in a way that helps you. Like, what do you mean by like research?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned earlier in your like science fiction kind of stuff that you were specifically researching like I don't know how to say it, but like with one of your characters, like their like movements kind of.
Uh-huh.
Is that something you still like look into even though your work has changed so much? Like seeing I don't know, in like books or wherever?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks. So yes, I'm kind of detail oriented in that way, and the authenticity of whatever area I'm trying to explore. Obviously, none of us are omniscient. We don't know everything, but we see a little something that, or we get an assignment. In the case, like when I was younger and I was doing illustration, I would get an assignment, and every time I got an assignment, I didn't know anything about the subject, or less about the subject than I felt comfortable just going ahead and just making it up. So I would do research and as much as I could about any given subject, if it was robots or spaceships or martial arts or something. And the way that sort of plays out today is, you know, I have a fair amount of books, and I read every single day, and I write notes, and I highlight things and I underline them, and work out ideas, and then if I don't know something, I will go out and take photos of it, or draw from life, or paint from life, and I'm always like, you can't come to the end of knowing anything. Like, none of us will ever research a topic and get all the information there is to know. I mean, like any search on Google will tell you that, right? Sort of like you search for one term and there's like, you know, several 100 million responses. And so you can't go through all of them. You just pick something until you get enough information that it seems like you have enough that enables you to make a work of art on the subject that caught your attention. So that's how I do it. That's how I do it today. And like, you know, something about being alive has a mystery to it. Like, what are we doing here? What's our purpose? And so like kind of explore those things and try to make art of them. And that's how I do the research today. Does that help?
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thanks.
Okay, cool, great.
We have another question. So what's your favorite part of drawing?
Oh, all right. So who's asking that?
This is Juliana.
Hi, Juliana. All right, so this may be a running theme for me. Flesh it out a little more for me. What do you mean? What's my favorite part of drawing?
Like, is it like the imagination, or like the process, or, you know, like when you have like a strike of inspiration, do you just like start like going off by there and just like continuing it, or does that make sense?
Yeah, Juliana, thank you so much for explaining that a little more. That's so helpful. I can't even, like, for all of you, like, okay, so let me start here for a second. Why it's so helpful is because, like, in your own mind, right, in all of us, this is the way we work. So it's pretty clear what we're thinking, and it's like we wrap up this little present and then we send it out to somebody else in the form of words, and they unpack it, and it's like, you know, they don't know what was going on in your mind. Like, it's not like they interpret something completely different. Often it's like, how often have we been talking to somebody, a friend or somebody close, and it's like, no, that's not what I meant. Or they say to us the same thing. And so, like, that's why I'll probably keep asking, okay, flesh that out for me a little more so I can answer the question like a little better. So Juliana, thanks. And so all of it like is really kind of my favorite. There's nothing that really stands out as being like better than anything else. I love when I'm working from imagination. I love working. I think probably the thing that I made a decision early on, like when I was your age, was I as technology. So technology, when I was so like, I don't know, you guys are probably what, like 16 something, 15, 16, 17. I'm guessing, I don't know. And the computer for me was like not even, it was around, but it wasn't like a part of life. The internet wasn't present. It's like Photoshop wasn't there. All these digital, fun, cool things weren't part of the mix. And I determined that I liked all that stuff as it was coming in, but I really liked drawing, and I liked the real world better than the virtual world. You know, the virtual world is super cool, but I like the real world better. So I'm going to try and answer your question, and I'm hoping that I'm doing a good job. And just tell me if I'm not, and then I'll work it out. I'll try to work it out better. But one day when I was doing those drawings of, you know, when I was young, when I was your age, and the computer was around, I was also learning like some 3D software. So I was like older than you then. I was in my 20s. And you know, you guys probably, some of you may have touched on to some of the 3D software already, and it's kind of dense. It's, you know, it's a little complicated. It's not impossible, obviously, because millions of people do it. But I've been working on it, and yeah, I still worked in my sketchbook, but I'd really been devoting a lot of time to try and learn like all the new computer stuff that was available to me. And I was cleaning up one day, and I came across some drawings that I had started, you know, of the girlfriend that, you know, I had at the time, and that caught my attention. And I was looking at those drawings, and they were just quick. They were unfinished, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing with this stupid computer thing? Like, if I pull the plug on that, if the power goes out, if the internet goes out, if the software development, like every time I was in Photoshop or every time I was in the 3D like programs, I'm thinking, Jesus, these people are so amazing. Like, how smart do you have to be? How well organized does your team have to be to put together a program like this so that some dumbhead like me can use it and not fully like utilize it either, just have fun playing around with it. But like, I'm looking at this piece of paper, these sketches that I did, and I love the way the pencil was like gliding across the paper in the real world. And it wasn't digital, it was real. And it wasn't anybody else but me, my eyesight, my thoughts, my love, my response, genuine, pure response. It wasn't like mediated through technology. It wasn't me looking through a camera and copying something. It was me looking at real life and responding like with my brain and my eyesight and my hand onto a piece of paper. And I was like, okay, that whole practice, and this is where I think I'm getting to like answering your question. What process? It's the creative process of doing it in the real world. So whether I'm painting or drawing or doing it from imagination or from memory, it's when I feel I'm being most sincere and I'm not faking it. I'm not trying to do something that's cool or then I'm not trying to do something I know will sell. I'm not being contrived about something. I'm just being honest. When I'm being really honest, that's the part that I love the most. And it's because, okay, let me even round out this question a little further. We have a little bit of time left, right, Roger?
We do. Go ahead.
Okay, good, good. So let me round out this question a little further then. This idea, an answer to this idea. So you've probably all heard something like an answer to, well, there's purpose to life, right? Things happen for a reason, or you're here for a reason, or there's, you have a calling. Maybe you've heard something like that. And so these ideas come in some sense from this period of time where maybe you've heard of it, like where they were the Romantics making art. And I love this idea that they come up with. That, I'm going to summarize it without going too nuts about history, but there's this idea that there's a wisdom that makes trees grow up out of the ground. That's kind of interesting. And so, it's that kind of thing you might think of as the thing we're most familiar with in our culture is the wisdom might be called like God has a plan. So whether you believe or not is not really important. What you know about yourself is there's something indistinct in you as a human being that has almost feels like it's got an intention on its own, trying to make itself known to you and out through you into the world. And that might be that purpose that you have here. There's another way of saying that human beings are a way of the universe coming to know itself. So there's this foggy thing that's inside you that wants to make itself out. And you're saying, well, like, what is it? Well, it's not clear. It's not supposed to be clear. You do one thing and then, like the next step lights up in front of you. And then you take that step and the next step lights up in front of you. And, that's how I've been using like my life as an artist and my sketchbook process, and what I'm trying to suggest that you all might utilize for yourself, not just for this little assignment, but for like your whole life. And that's what I like most about the whole process, is being creative and being in touch with that wisdom in that makes trees grow up out of the ground, finding yourself, like trying to be authentic. And okay, so maybe I'll be quiet there. Did that sort of help?
That was great.
Okay.
We have more questions. So
great. Then I'll try and speed up my answers too.
No, it's fine. We have the time to explore.
Okay, good.
The next is from Abby. And she writes, I really love the breadth of imagery in your pieces. Did you find it hard transitioning from one style or subject matter into another, or did it just kind of occur naturally over time?
That's great. That's a great question, Abby. So I think I understand that, and I'll answer. And if I didn't, then sing out and resist the urge to reach through the computer and smack me because I got it all wrong. Just sing out and tell me like to answer in a different way, and I'll try that. It's never been hard. And so, yeah, it happened kind of naturally. And here's a way of answering that. It's not hard for you to process what we're doing here and move to a different subject and then go outside and go for a walk and then play a video game or listen to music or watch TV and watch like several different TV shows and listen to several different types of music. And, especially just because you're a human being, you have multiple interests. And all of those multiple interests that each of us as individuals have that in some way overlap with each other, because we're all sharing certain things, and we can make friends that share certain interests, and you think, oh, isn't that wonderful, isn't that beautiful, isn't that cool, or whatever. That process makes making art very natural. Like, it doesn't make it difficult moving from one thing to the other. If I would say there's something that's challenging, is, how can I say this in a way that makes sense? Let me think for a second. Okay. There's the element of us that's kind of a complainy, whiny, critical element that I might say is like the negative side. And so you can make art that, like, and we all know people that, we speak to on the phone, and they're complaining, and they're always complaining, and life is so hard, and isn't it terrible, and oh my God, I can't believe, whatever. And then there's this other part of us that's more optimistic and is happy to be alive, and is filled with energy, and wants to do something productive. And we know people like that too. The thing that's challenging, and art history has this challenge, is it's much easier to make visual imagery that focuses on the negative, on hell, so to speak. It's much easier to make interesting monsters and demons and horror movies and frightening, scary things that freak people out, and that reference the kind of pain and suffering that's a part of life. It's far more challenging to do something beautiful, sincere, honest, uplifting, encouraging, and do it in such a way that doesn't come off as corny. And you make a determination as a person, what end of that spectrum you want your work to, as an artist, how you want to engage these two elements of existence and people, and what you want to put into the world. And for me, increasingly, I feel, that putting things of beauty into the world that are an affirmation of life, that are uplifting, is something that I feel sincere about. But the challenge, like in answer to your question, is it's not like, I'm not like everybody else. I can be moany and critical and whiny, and I can, certainly, and I know how to make monsters. I've done it professionally. I can make artwork that is as hellish and nightmarish and scary. I can use my abilities as a human being to, for good or for bad, and to make a deliberate intention artistically to focus on the positive consistently, is when, sometimes it's just easier to make artwork that the world sees as more serious, and if you make an image of somebody who's suffering, that's seen as more serious than if you make an image of somebody who's beautiful. And if you do you do a portrait or a painting of your young sister or brother or whatever, you do of a child, of people, and it's beautiful, and the sun is shining, and the world is beautiful. There's a good section of the public that will criticize you and say, "Oh heck, that's not even serious." Like, and to deal with that kind of criticism is real. That might be part of the challenge. Not so much for me. Like I genuinely feel like I like what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing, and I know like how to align myself. So anyhow, that's, I've spoken for enough. Maybe that's maybe we'll go on to the next question. Does that answer the question?
I have a follow-up to what you were just talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
So do you think it's possible then for someone to be exploring subject matter that is on the troubling side, dealing with things that are horrors of life, and yet independently, in their own life, artistically, working through a positive focus and not approaching your actual work from a negative, complaining kind of way, but that the subject matter can be completely independent of one's own personality expressed through art?
That's an interesting question. While you were saying that, so I'm gonna bring up an artist. And Roger, you probably know of her, and probably the rest of you don't. Her name is Kathy Kollowitz. Do you know her work, Roger?
I do.
Yeah. So very, very powerful work. And her oh gosh, she lived through both world wars. And the First World War was pretty dreadful. I mean, World War is going to be dreadful anyhow. The work she did, she lost her sons in the war. She made the world was going through political turmoil. People were starving. It's the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. There were bread lines. I mean, it was a really rough time, but it's not like any other time was any easier. It's always been a rough time. It's probably easier for us now than ever before. But in any case, when you were talking, I was thinking about her work. But I think the sincerity of her work, and certainly she's not painting or drawing. I mean, she did etchings, right? And a lot of black and whites. She stopped painting. Her work, for you guys, is well worth looking up and understanding. She's really one of the greats. And for those, well, boys and girls, it's not often that you get like a woman artist in history, just because of the nature of the way things played out through time, that is that powerful as an artist, and she certainly was. In any case, her work is really sincere, really honest. So I think, like, yeah, I mean, it focused on, really troubling issues that humanity was dealing with, that she saw and she was living through. But I don't think that one could, I think if you're being authentic, the work takes over your life. Like your personal self-expression is a reflection of your philosophy. It's not like you can be happy-go-lucky and then painting nightmares. There's some kind of connection that I think that needs to be made between the expression, the way people express themselves in reality, and the way they try to do it with their artwork. So does that answer the question, kind of?
Yeah, that does for me. And what stands out is how you're saying it has to do with authenticity.
Yes.
It has to do with your honesty in approach. So it's not to say you do ugly subject matter, so you're an ugly human being. Or you do pleasant subject matter and you're a wonderful human being. In either case, you're making selections, but artistically, I think we all have to strive toward honestly understanding ourselves and our motivations and putting our best effort forward.
Yeah.
Sense, one is never going to be their best artistic self if they're falling into the negative. I think one's always going to find their best artistic self if they are reaching toward their positive possibilities. And
maybe, you know, maybe, I mean, there are artists that do, and I'm sure like everybody here can pull out, you know, examples of things. There are artists that their whole focus is towards like the dark, and it envelops them, and they do marvelous artwork. My goodness, like think of H.R. Giger, you know, doing, you know, that kind of, you know, technology influenced nightmare alien stuff that makes its way into film, and this is a very inspirational kind of artwork that really, and you know, to see imagery of him, it's like he looks like he belongs in one of his paintings. My goodness. And there are other people who have done, you know, surrealistic type of paintings, and it, you know, when I think of artists and their work and the intention, his sincere intention behind exploring like their creative self-expression, the being doesn't become divorced from it. In this world today, it's a common thing, and maybe many of you have heard it. Certainly I heard it when I was your age. It never made sense to me, and it does now, but it didn't at the time, where people would say, yeah, you work, but who are you really? Don't tell me what you do for your living. Tell me who you are really. And at the time, I didn't understand that. I was like, well, come on, this is the, you use up the meat of your day, you know, of your whole sandwich, doing something, right? Like, how could that not be you? And I think today I get that in a sense, because people don't want to identify with their work because they're not being authentic. They're doing it from some kind of practical standpoint. It's like, well, I need to make a living, so this is what I do, but it's not what I really care about. And I'm suggesting, you know, to you, before you guys have to get into the real world, you figure out what you really care about, and you make that your job. And when, you know, the greats of art history, you know, they make artwork, whether it's positive or negative or whatever, they become their artwork. Their artwork is a reflection of them, whether it's, you know, H.R. Giger doing, you know, nightmarish like imagery. You look up images of him, well, he looks like he could fit right into his painting wearing black and the black makeup, and it's like, whoa, the scary looking dude. Probably a nice guy. I know people who knew him, but also like really strange. And so, you know, be careful what you're doing, or don't be careful. Let it flow through you. Let it be what you believe the world could be and should be, and have that come out of you. Something wants to come out of you. Let it come out. All right, that's enough of that. I'm talking too much.
No problem. So, okay. A couple more. So, Rokia asks, do you ever have times when you hate drawing?
Never. I actually, excuse me, I have the reverse. Everything. So, okay. I had a friend that was one of my teachers, and we painted together. In many ways in adult life, he was more of a father to me, and in my adult life than my own father. And what he would say is a little joke, and I think this is a great way of answering that question. So that sometimes life gets in the way of art. And so I never hate drawing. Things get in the way of me drawing and painting and creating. Here's another way of looking at that. One thing I think we can all agree on is there's like a tremendous untapped potential that we have as human beings. Who knows what we're capable of? We all can put our heads on the pillow at night and know with 100% certainty that we are not utilizing the full potential that life has within us. And, something gets in the way, we're a lazy, we procrastinate, we do something and we're not fully utilizing our potential. In that capacity, I know when I go down for the night that I haven't drawn enough. I haven't been as good as I could have been, and that my commitment the next day should be to be at least maybe at my most humble aspiration, maybe 1% better than I was yesterday. It's like I was pretty pathetic yesterday. Maybe I could just be like, as hard as I committed myself, I know it wasn't it. As hard as I worked, I could have been like a little bit better. So maybe today I can be like 1% better than I was yesterday, and maybe 1% better. And I don't ever hate what I love to do. I wish that there weren't so many things taking me away from what I love to do. Yeah, I gotta wash the dishes, I gotta take a shower, I gotta clean my little dirty self, I gotta go for a walk and exercise my aging body, I gotta answer the phone, I gotta call my mom because that's the moral imperative that's associated with life. And goodness gracious, she gave me life and I should really be thankful for that. And I don't hate calling her either. I should call my father too. And I should answer that like 100 emails that came in, or at least look through them and weed through them. And well, I should go shopping, and maybe I should clean this house, and maybe I should do my laundry. And there's like an endless list of things that are getting in the way of me wanting to draw. So I never hate drawing. It's like when I finally get to do it, because there's a 1,000 other things getting in the way, I'm like, oh, thank the Lord, I'm finally doing what I love to do again, and in spite of all these interruptions. Did that answer that question?
I think so. This one is kind of related.
Okay.
Bryn is asking, how did you learn to be proud of your art and confident in your style?
Oh, that's a nice question, Bryn. I'm not. The way I answered, like, I think Roger probably picked this up in a sense, is the way I answered that last question is like, I know I'm not utilizing my full potential. The carrot's always held out in front of me. I do what I do, and I think, well, that's about as good as I can do right now. But there's always this like distance between what you hold in your mind as the potential for what you'd like to get out into the real world, and then what you actually do get out into the real world. And that's, those two things aren't really the same. And rarely does it surprise me that what I get into the real world is better than what I believe I'm capable of. That doesn't happen too often. That I put something out in the real world and I go, well, how about that? I wonder who was driving then, because that person was doing a better job, or that entity was doing a better job than I'm usually capable of. Usually it's, you probably could have done a better job. That arm is a little too skinny, that proportion's not quite right. That's not fully expressing the thing that, in the way you think is like, okay, here's another way of looking at that. I place this, for me, the highest aspiration of what art could be. So at its highest, art has the potential to bond us as people. So if you like a piece of music, well, let's just say Beethoven. If you like Beethoven, and I like Beethoven, then we have something that bonds us, and we're less likely to kill each other. So art can perform a civilizing function in that way. And if you take it seriously enough and you're trying to manifest what it is that you think is beautiful in the world in such a way that other people it'll catch other people's attention and remind them of what makes life worth living, then and I'm trying to do that, right? So like I think that's a poetic thing. I see it in the world and I try and make it beautiful and put it on to paper or paint or whatever. Well, that's pretty high aspiration. And I look at my art that I make and I think, so you think you've done this little drawing and somebody else is actually going to see it and think this is what makes life worth living? It's a pretty bold ambition of you there, young man. Failed again. And so, yeah, and it's not as bad as it was for me when I was your age, but when I was your age, I was also not as like ambitious as I am now. I did what I liked to do. I thought it was cool to draw robots and comics, and I just loved drawing it. It's just that I did it, and like the style element of it that you reference in your question, I would do it, and there was something about the way I was drawing, if I'm understanding your question properly, that there was that thing that was coming out of me in my drawing, which I didn't like. And it's still present. It's like when you look in the mirror and you kind of wish that you were like 10% more beautiful. Like maybe all of us think that. It's like, oh, you, that nose of yours, that voice of yours, that cowlick, that hair, that skin, that, like, could you just fix it up a little bit better? And it's like that with the drawing too. It's like that with the art too. It's like, oh, could it just be like a little better? When I was younger, I would see it and was kind of critical of it, maybe like you are. And my answer to that was, well, this is where I am right now. Let's keep working at this, and tomorrow we'll work at making it 1% better. And if I get 2%, like good, but the only way forward is to be committed towards making it better. And here's the great thing, and then I'll shut up and take the next question. And it still happens for me today, and I know it probably happens for all of you. You put in an hour of work, or even 30 minutes, like on a regular basis, and you learn some tiny little 1% of something. When you draw from life, or when you draw from imagination, it's not always the same awful thing. Maybe it's still bad, but it's 1% better than it was the last time. Okay, and then one more thing related to that last thing. I had a teacher, when I was younger, and he said to me in a kind of crude manner, because he was just so much further ahead than I was, and I thought, wow, like yeah, maybe I asked something similar, like had some sort of similar question, and he said something, and he didn't say much, but he did say this. He said, you're always going to suck. You'll just suck at a slightly higher level. And that's kind of maybe like it might sound negative, but maybe it's a positive. You'll never ever get to the place where you're perfect or you're as good as you're ever going to be. You'll always be improving, and you always want to be improving. And that's a nice way of looking at the practice of living life and being an artist. But living life is that you'll never get to the destination you're going. You'll never be as good as you could possibly be. You'll just be incrementally better. And that's a very noble, good way to live life, to keep improving yourself. All right, so that's my answer.
That's great insight and great advice. By the way, to everybody, I threw in the chat the spelling of Kate Kollowitz's name, who Dorian mentioned earlier, so you can reference that if you want to look her up. So we have 2 more questions, and I'm going to finish up with Evie's question, but I'm going to read Larson's first. So Larson says, looking at your works, I get a sense of surrealness, this fluid, almost dreamlike state to your pieces. What would you chalk this up to? Subject matter, brushwork technique, or is it a combination of multiple factors?
That's a great question. Okay, the brushwork and the technique are separate from the subject matter. That's the first part of that answer. And then the second part is to say, like, they're somewhat related, but still the technique. So let me see if I can parse some of that into categories, and hopefully I won't get lost in the weeds, because that's very possible. It's such a good question. The subject matter has to do with, and the technique has to do with reality. So I'm using, like, it's obviously I'm not an abstract artist, right? And so the brushwork, and there can be some elements of my brushwork and my line work and everything that I'm doing that might be looser in some areas, tighter in other areas. I have more stuff on Instagram and more stuff on, you know, my website, and just whatever. So you can see a variety of that. But the technique is real, and that relates, it's real and realistic, and that relates to the philosophy that is how I'm trying to explore ideas. And the ideas can be surrealistic, and you know, I don't know, does that sort of answer it? I'm thinking maybe that's convoluted answer and not clear. But does that answer it?
Well, no, that's incredibly helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Larson, there you are. So yeah. So let me take it a drop further. You have ideas. I would guess, you know, like maybe we all do, but you have ideas that if you want to make poetry out of them, right? So you think of a poem, and the poem is basically like, all right, let's just say we're walking through the woods, and it's a nice day like it is right now. We can see outside, and you know, it's sunny out there. Maybe it's warm enough for us to walk in the woods, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a little cooler. Maybe it's a little damp because it was raining yesterday. And maybe there's the feeling of you walking through the woods, and the sun hits your skin, and then it's cool and it's damp, and whatever it is. So you're having this thing, and you sit down and you write poetry. You don't have an infinite amount of time to record all of the impressions that make their way into your consciousness, and your brain is editing some of that stuff anyhow. So, and suppose as a practice for your poem, you try to encompass the experience in haiku. Let's make it even really, you know, 5-7-5, right? 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. So that becomes art, and you have limitations in which you decide you're going to make the artwork, and it's the experience that you had in the world, and in some way that kind of like compresses everything together into a few lines of language that you use to express your experience in the world. And with the language, it can be more abstract and harder for other people to understand, or it can be more lyrical and more concrete and easier for people to understand. And so like that's a technique. And like when I'm painting, or if you're painting or drawing, you can relate an idea that you have that feels like you want to be creative about it and make it into art, and put it onto paper or onto a canvas. But let's say it's paper and it's a sketchbook. You have an idea about a dream. And so you put those impressions down onto the piece of paper. Or maybe it's not a dream, and maybe it's some experience that you're really observing right there. Maybe it's your mother cooking dinner, or it's somebody that you love, or I don't know what, pair of sneakers. I mean, I just don't even know, right? But it's something. Maybe it's a memory that you have. Maybe it's lyrics from a song. Maybe it's the type of person that you dream of being with. And you're trying to pull that out of your imagination and shape it with line onto the page, and so you use like the technique to try and get that across in a way that seems like it's in alignment with your vision, and so I don't know. Okay. Does that answer some of it too? Does that round it out even more?
It's answered a lot of questions, and it's also given me a lot to think about as well.
Okay. Yeah. The process of thinking is good. It gets deeper and deeper, and that's fun. It's fun.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you.
All right, Roger.
We have one last question. This is from Evie, and this question could take the rest of the month to answer. So we'll
boy.
pare it down. But Evie says, could you elaborate or further explain Carl Jung's concept of individuation? It seems you found your dharma, if you will, or what calls your heart through absorbing beauty around you and reflecting what you see through your work. How did this idea of individuation affect the transmutation of your work?
Evie, you are super cool. What a great question. Thanks for taking the time to articulate that is in the manner that you did. All right. Evie, have you heard of Joseph Campbell? Evie, are you out there somewhere?
Yeah, sorry, I had to
Okay.
unmute
No, that's
myself.
cool.
Yeah, I have heard of him.
Okay. So for those of you who have not and are interested in what we're talking about, Joseph Campbell is the one to look at. And then after Joseph Campbell, the modern day version of that would be maybe Jordan Peterson, if you guys have heard of him. Something similar but different. But so let me talk about Campbell. He's less polemical of a figure in some circles. Not that Peterson should be, but Campbell is where we started, and this process of individuation is, is something that I got through reading Campbell and listening to his work, and I spent a good deal of time stuff and coming up with drawings and ideas, and that opened up a whole world for me. So the short answer is how I came to understand individuation as individuals, it's the process that we come to know what it is that's important to us and how we are becoming the people that we should become. And should is an important way, because we could do something, but we don't have to. But should is an imperative, like it's important and you should do this. So I'm going to suggest, and it was suggested to me through like Campbell's writings and other philosophers, that you should be who you are supposed to be. So related to that is another thinker, Friedrich Nietzsche. Are you familiar with him? Evie out there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm
No.
familiar with him. My computer's a little...
Okay, no, that's cool. I just also wanted to say that, and reason why I'm having a little back and forth between myself and you, and then I don't just talk forever, is for one, because I need to plug in, for one, actually, because it's the right thing to do, and I shouldn't just ramble on, and I do ramble on for long periods at a time. But for another, I have to plug a speaker into my computer because my computer speaker isn't working and the power will go out if I talk too long. So I need to have a back and forth. Otherwise, I won't know that you guys are saying anything. Anyhow, so, okay, Nietzsche. Here's a little aspect of something that sung out to me among many things that he wrote about that's of interest and that relates to the topic that we're talking about. There are stages in the development of becoming, and at the first stage, you are a child, and the child is like a camel, and the camel that would bear much. And so you come into this world. The world has been in existence before you got here. It's got all these rules, all these mores. You should do this and act like this, and this is socially appropriate, and this is how you move through the world. And so it's got all these rules, and you should believe this, and this is your faith, and you know, it's not like you chose it, like this is what you're born into, and you know, and you know, and so you have all these things that are heaped upon you. This is what it's like to be, you know, a boy or a girl, or you know, Jewish or Christian or Muslim or whatever, right? So you have all these like things that were in existence that are heaped onto you. The existentialists have another way of saying this, like where you're thrown into existence. Like you didn't choose this thing. It's just like, boom, you're just thrown into the mix of this like pool of all this stuff. And so, you know, this first stage is like just all this stuff is being heaped upon you, and you're like the camel that would bear much. And then at a certain point, roughly around where you are now into your 20s, you know, maybe, you know, for some people into their 30s, you become like the lion that rebels, and you go, no. You start thinking more independently. You start analyzing and being more critical of things that have been heaped on you, that you've been carrying, that where the world has been telling you, this is who you are, this is how you should act, this is whatever, these are the rules, and you're like, actually, no. I'm not, no, that's not right. Now, in the process of doing that, no, you can get stuck there. And many of us know people like that. And this might be like the rebel without a cause. You just get angry at the world. You become the angry young man or the angry young woman. You know, you're just shaking your fist at everything and everything. It sucks, excuse me. You know, and like the world is a terrible place, and like the end trajectory of that thought where everything is so dreadful is you just take out a gun and you start shooting people. That's pretty bad trajectory. But the proper way to parse that rebellion, that time is to start trying to understand what it is that you should be in this world. And Campbell has all these, like, his stuff is so worthwhile reading, and you come to understand mythology. And as a mythologist, what he was doing with all these stories, these folk tales and stories, is finding the unifying theme, is what Carl Jung would say is the archetypal, is the archetype, is as human beings, we have a psychology that is asking something similar across and around the world, across cultures and around the world. It's like, well, what are we doing here? How should you live your life? How should you best live your life? What should you be doing with your life? As an independent unit of carbon person, how do you manage your freedoms in relationship to, the culture that you live in, the society, the group of people that you live in, and inside a space that's larger than yourself, like, the world, the universe, somehow it comes into being, it goes out of being. Nature is the great creator, sustainer, and destroyer. And how do you relate to that as a human being? And so all cultures sort of like, well, so culture might be the art that's made, and the music that's made, and the mythology that's made, and the beliefs that come out of the society. Society might be the group of people. So so you figure out these things. This is getting long-winded, and I apologize. And I know we're getting close to the end here. So, and Roger's right. We could speak about this for days. So you figure that thing out as an individual. You don't get frustrated and pull out a gun and start shooting things because the world isn't the way you think it should be. You figure out a way of mediating that space, your path through the world, and becoming like at peace with it and a proactive person inside your society that does things that knit your society together in a positive way. You become a positive force for society. And if you're an artist and that's what you're doing, then you put good into the world. And that's, like that process of becoming, figuring out how you can contribute something of value to the culture that you lived in, for the culture and for yourself. And then the last stage of Nietzsche's process, which also relates to Carl Jung, and that process of being an individual is, so once you start to understand that, then you are like the child again, but this time at play, like the seriousness of the child at play is now in the adult life, the seriousness of you at play as an individual with conscious intention. Like now you love what you do, as in this case as an artist, and but whatever you're doing, you love what you do and you're conscious about it, and then you're just as serious as the child at play. And certainly we're all children in comparison to the scope of the universe. It's like, what the heck? A little grain of sand. But but with intention and purpose to do good, and noble, and make a noble use of our little limited time that we have alive. Alive. So, and that becomes, being an individual. That's the process of individuation. becoming yourself. All
Wow.
right.
Dorian,
Thank you
so much
so much.
for spending the morning with us, for showing us your work, for giving us, I think, so much more than we thought we might receive. So thank you for all of that. I'd love for everyone to be able to give applause, but in this format, it's not going to work. What I'm thinking is people might want to just put their thank yous into the chat, and you could view them from there.
That's so nice.
But that's going to bring this to a conclusion then, everybody. And Ms. Reinhardt, you're free to stop the recording at this point.
Thank you so much, Dorian. See you this afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say real quick, this is Evie speaking, by the way.
Hi, Evie.
Thank you so much for that. That was really cool. Like everything that you just said.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, all of the people that you mentioned, like Jordan Peterson, I watch a lot of his lectures. And
Love him. Yeah, I love him.
yeah, he's great. And Mr. Brinker and Miss Reinhardt actually introduced me to Joseph Campbell last year, because I started I guess, yeah, bringing more meaning to the work that I was doing in terms of art. And yeah, I don't really know what to say right now, because like everything that you just said, my mind is like blown.
Oh,
now.
great. Roger, how much time do we have left here?
I'd say we have up to 6